I begin today by acknowledging the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to all Aboriginal people on Wiradjuri country, their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I would also like to acknowledge Wiradjuri cultural knowledge holder William Ingram, who was unable to attend today as the community are in sorry business, and we ask that you share a minute's silence in recognition of those lost. So I will do that now. Okay, thank you. I also just wanted to add to that with COVID and lockdown at the moment, we're all sort of in a world of unknowns with working from home or homeschooling, which can be pretty tough. Yeah, and I just sort of wanted to make a note and to make sure that we're all sort of working together and working with positivity, connection and compassion. So yeah, and now I'll just hand back over to Nancy.
Super, thanks Claire. So to support this online process, there are quite a few of our FRRR IRCF team in this meeting. There's 7 of us. And you'll meet them through the process, some of them through the process, I'm sure. As we mentioned earlier, the second section, we will break out into rooms in regards to reviewing that roadmap, and there'll be 2, if not 1, IRCF facilitator in that space for you to get to know, unless you've already got to know them through that digital connection session. But I'm now going to share my screen and show you the agenda for our meeting today. So here we are. For this first hour, it's general IRCF information, what the IRCF program funds and the IRCF focus areas, the priority areas, the pillars, people, structures and systems, sector efficiencies and strategy. And then we'll move into some Leeton IRCF evaluation findings, the IRCF investment in Leeton to date, and we'll also, just show you quickly the purpose of the roadmap and the desired outcomes from this event. The second hour, like I mentioned, we're going to go into the breakout rooms, and from the feedback of the last session, that is a very important part of this meeting. We'll go into separate breakout rooms for groups to spend around 40 minutes really unpacking the goals per priority area, the activities that will lead to those goals. And then we'll also reflect on or let you know how, in terms of this being a continued conversation, how you can continue to input into this roadmap update. I'll show you the IRCF Digital Hub, a new website, give you a sneak peek of where all the IRCF community roadmaps will live, so that the communities can see what they're all working on. And really to support that peer support between the communities. Claire will give you a little bit of information in terms of there's an IRCF partnership round that has opened today, and she'll give you a little bit of information about receiving those guidelines. and some upcoming IRCF events. And of course, we'll close with feedback and thanks. So, like I said earlier, the majority of you should have received some background information in regards to the IRCF program, and I'm just going to touch on that briefly to support our conversations in the second half. So, these are key elements of the IRCF program. It is supporting locally governed not-for-profits in Leeton. The local facilitator, being Claire in Leeton, is a key part of this program and the model in terms of supporting how the not-for-profits engage in the program. The development of this community map, this community vision for the not-for-profits is a key element, as well as funding. And there's two elements of how funding, two ways in which funding rolls for the IRCF program, and that's IRCF partnership grants, which is the round that's currently just open today. And then there's ongoing toolbox support funding that is that currently funded IRCF organisations are eligible to apply for. And of course, supporting collaboration across all the funding elements. This collaboration is a really big part of what the IRCF program supports. And of course, we've got ongoing evaluation, which happens every 6 months. And the currently funded organisations are involved in surveys and interviews as part of that process. And there's also events that occur for community stakeholders to give their input and insights. And there's also a general community workshop. These are the priority areas that I'm sure you've heard us speaking a lot about. So as you all know, the IRCF program is focused on building capacity for not-for-profit organisations, how they function. That's what we are all about. And in terms of that capacity building, the program has divided that up into 4 different sections. We've got the people, developing leadership capabilities and a renewed sense of community spirit and fostering skill development to create strong organisations that bring together various leaders, groups and residents. So those activities, they're examples of people projects. Then we've got the systems and structures, supporting community leaders to input new insights and energy to effort by providing lessons, systems and structures that demonstrate best practice, legal structures, compliance and governance are some examples. Sector efficiencies, fostering relationships and practices that support efficient and effective collaboration with other not-for-profits to enhance community impact. Partnership development and management, investing in strategy, providing tools and measures that support and enable the sustainability of organisations well into the future, purpose and vision development, strategic planning and monitoring, revenue strategy. So I just want you to take a moment to have a look at these priority areas, because in the second part of our meeting today, we're going to break you out into rooms, 4 breakout rooms, 1 for each priority area. And if there is an area that you would really like to focus, I want you to send a message to Glenn with the title of the priority area that you would like to focus on today. We'll do our best. Of course, we've got to sort of enable a balance of participants per group. But if you could let us know by sending a message in the chat to Glenn which section you'd like to focus on, that would be fantastic. So I'll just give you another moment to have a look at the slide. Okay. So evaluation findings, as I said, every 6 months, the evaluation, we've got an external evaluation team that evaluates how the program, the impact of the program in the different communities. In the last evaluation data collection, there were 8 funded NFPs that took part in interviews and surveys. 7 community stakeholders in Leeton participated in a breakfast. There were 14 community members that participated in a community workshop and 21 online surveys that were filled out. So this is some of the feedback that came back. These are quite specific to the not-for-profits that were, the funded not-for-profits that were interviewed and surveyed. So what successes have you had? fixing major WHS issues for volunteers and the public, setting up a new office, taking out our own insurance previously auspiced by council, moved key operations online, exhibition entries, credit program for members, and setting up a community hub. So equipment involved with that. What are you planning to do next? More capital works with funds from Crown Lands, apply for next FRRR round, a membership drive, new website, continue website development, more operations online, write guidelines for equipment use, and promote the community hub. What barriers might there be to these projects and who could help? Need funding to pay a staff member, access to grants writer, availability of volunteers. So here we have evaluation findings on investment. So you'll see these are the total funds that have been granted in Leeton for 176,106. The allocation in round 2, there were 2 allotments for round 2 at separate dates. And then there was the original startup grant for 60. And here on the right, you can see the investment to the priority areas that I discussed earlier. So there is a bit more investment over here in people. Now, in terms of this leveraged funds, at the moment, there has, in the data collection, there's evidence of $8,000 being leveraged off IRCF funding. So basically, to explain that, for example, in a community, if if the community was to engage a grant writer, the IRCF program would invest in that grant writer, and potentially that grant writer can then leverage further funds through their engagement. And so that is, I guess, an example of leveraging. And another example of leveraging is when any project in any funding program is given funds, it enables momentum to that idea, which then causes further ideas to be born and potentially further funding to be sought, which brings more funds into the community. So even though this says $8,000, we do believe there's evidence of Leeton actually leveraging more than this, and we'll be aiming to capture that in the next evaluation process in October, as well as capturing employment to date, and the employment that's been activated through the IRCF program funding. And I'm now going to hand over to Claire to give you more of a story about specific Leeton investment to date in terms of the IRCF program.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Nancy. So yeah, as Nancy just mentioned, there has been just under $500,000 invested into Leeton through the IRCF program. And I think something that speaks really highly to the Leeton community is the mix of investments across the 4 pillars: the sector, systems, people, and strategy. And then again, also there's 2 projects that are ongoing over multiple years, which I think speaks to the sustainability and the future outlook of the community, which is really important and really positive. So we had 2 rounds of the partnership grants last year. So that was opened, they were in May, June last year, and then again October, November last year. So in the first round of grants, there was funding granted to the Whitton Public School P&C, and that was to set up the co-working space, which has been really well used by the community organisations in the Whitton community. And yeah, it's certainly shown some really positive results from that. The next one was the Leeton Art Society, and so they were given funding to develop their website and also invest in their digital literacy, which the team over there have been doing really well. Third, we had the Leeton Show Society, so an organisation that's really, really active in the community, which, you know, they run a really productive show every year, but yeah, they just needed to upgrade their facilities. So being able to renovate their space at the showgrounds will really impact their ability to put on their show, but also there's plans in place to improve their volunteer base, and yeah, work with some other NFPs as well. And then finally, for the first round was Leeton Connect. So I'm sure all of you have had plenty to do with Leeton Connect, and I feel really, really lucky to be able to work alongside this amazing group of people. It really, really makes my job easier. So their funding was to set up their organisation, and build their governance, but also get the resourcing to set up a communal space, and also fund the coordinator. So if I'm sure you've all met Mary. Mary's been doing an amazing job, and really is feeling a lot of she's really doing a lot of work that comes under the 4 pillars in this program. So so that's the first round that went through. And then so the second round, which was held again at the end of the year, so October, November, those that were funded were the Leeton Western Riverina Arts. So this is one of the programs that has actually is going over multiple years, so over 3 years, and that money was to put on the museum development officer. So Petra's working with 6 museums in the region by offering support and helping develop all sorts of things in terms of their strategy and their governance, and really, really doing an amazing job. And it's really exciting, actually. And it certainly fills that sector efficiency sort of pillar. Next, I skipped one, apologise. So the Leeton Community Care Development Incorporation, which we know as the Leeton Op Shop, but their main focus really is that the One Leeton program, which many of you are probably familiar with. So the fortnightly barbecues out at Wattle Hill, providing the barbecue, but also providing healthy meals and other sort of household goods. So the funding there was to increase their capacity to be able to do that. So in their kitchen, in the op shop, also with their food truck, we have supported some resources to do with their food truck to assist the work they're doing out there, but also the increasing their resources in the op shop kitchen is going to help them with their training capabilities into the future. Next, we have the Leeton Multicultural Group. So this funding is another one that goes over multiple years, and this funding was to put on the operations manager. And if you're not familiar with Ken, I'm sure you soon will be. He's a very, very active community member, and he's really there to be a support person, but also to provide awareness, I suppose, to community members in the multicultural community of services that are available. And he's really going above and beyond in that area. And then finally, we had the Rotary of Leeton, and their project was to put on the Henry V play, which was held earlier in this year. And previous in the information package that you would have received, there was actually a mistake that went out in there. It was meant to read, it was meant to be about the actual Henry V project. So I'll just read this to you now. So the Roxy Community Theatre's production of Henry V leveraged a cultural event to engage 249 volunteers and incubate a volunteer bank, the result of which is now a local community resource that other local charities and organisations are utilising. So it was if you didn't see it yourself, it was an absolutely amazing show, but just all these other benefits that have come out of it. So the volunteer bank, and it was just really great to see how well all these groups work together to put on such a magnificent show. And so that about sums up the investment to date. So we'll hand back over to Nancy.
Thanks, Claire. So in terms of the purpose of the roadmap, the purpose of the actual document is to identify local not-for-profit needs that align with the IRCF program's priority areas and the program's intention, which is to strengthen how not-for-profit organisations function in Leeton. And so the roadmap aims to articulate the steps required to guide the sector in achieving shared goals. Our overall aim is that this document is something that the Leeton community really, by the time the program culminates, that they have a really strong sense of ownership of, and will continue to update into the future to support the sustainability of local not-for-profits. In terms of the outcomes, our desired outcomes that we hope you share in terms of this online roadmap review is that the Leeton not-for-profit sector effectively work together and contribute to a strategic vision that aims to support the sector's sustainability into the future. Another outcome from the online roadmap review is shared clarity for the Leeton not-for-profit sector on the capacity building goals and the steps required to improve the sector resourcing and efficiency, increased confidence in the Leeton not-for-profit sector to connect online, and improved understanding in the Leeton community about the Leeton IRCF program and investment to date. So that pretty much wraps up our first aspect of the session. And so now I'm going to hand over to Kate Brabin to feed back any questions that, that she might have collected in response to that session.
Sorry, Nancy, I was just unmuting. So we had to enlarge and find the button. And so we have a couple, and they're probably fairly specific to Claire in that one is, where do we access guidelines for a new round? Is there a link? So Claire, maybe that's one for you.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we've actually just opened the IRCF partnership grants today. So I will be sending you an email tomorrow with the link to the guidelines. So this process is going to be a little bit different in the past. So we're going to be doing a simple expression of interest process. So initially you'll just need to contact me and I can have a chat with you and pass on the expression of interest questions. So it'll just be a few simple, easy questions, and then we'll go from there. So once you've submitted your expression of interest, we'll have a look at that, and the myself and the IRCF team will have a bit of a chat, and then we can go forward and help you work out whether to continue with an application. So we will pass that information on to you. So really it probably sounds like it's a little bit more complicated, but essentially it'll be a little bit more easy, and it's going to be able to save time, just ensuring that the projects are in line with the IRCF program.
So the other question, there was only two, we're doing well. The other question was the toolbox funding amount for Leeton, Claire.
Oh, that's a good one. I might just ask if Nancy will be able to answer that one.
Yeah, no problem. So it's 50,000 for the lifetime of the program is the toolbox funding. And yes, that's focused on collaborative projects. So yeah, it is for initiatives where organisations are working together. And eligibility for the toolbox funding, it needs to come through a previously funded IRCF organisation. And in terms of applying for that, once again, reaching out to Claire, and Claire will send you a link, but also having a conversation with Claire. So I think our key piece here is we don't want to waste anyone's time. So that conversation is about touching base and really getting clear on eligibility, and ensuring that be it IRCF or be it partnership grant, that it is attending or responding to the roadmap. And then we send through the links in terms of, actually getting into the FRRR grant gateway and starting your application. So, yeah,